Bookfighters, it's Wednesday, it's Sarah, and I did not just finish reading Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. I actually finished it on Saturday this time, which means I've had time to actually think about the book. So hopefully today's review will be a bit better. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I finished this on Saturday. Part of that's because I was actually able to start it on Thursday instead of starting it on Friday, like I often end up doing. And another big part of it was the style that it's written. It's something you can really get through really, really quickly. But I think the biggest part of it was I just really could not stop reading this book because every time I would have to stop reading it because I had to go do something else, I was just thinking about it, which is excellent. That doesn't happen very often, I've been finding. Like, there are a lot of books that are like that, but I don't know, it just hasn't happened as many with the books that I've been reading for Bookfighters. I usually take a while. Like, usually when I'm reading books, before we started Bookfighters, I would read like 5 books at once, and it would take me a while to finish any one book because I'd be reading a whole bunch of others because my attention span is such that I would just keep changing books. But this was one of those that I definitely could not do it, and I was kind of annoyed because I had nothing to read, but I didn't have time rereading anyway. So yeah, but the thing that often happens when a book is very suspenseful, which this book I think is suspenseful, but it's not in the usual sort of way. Like, this book, to me, is one that is impossible to spoil, because pretty much I knew going into it, if you know what it's about and you've heard about people trying to ban it because idiots think rape is erotic, which is wrong, then you know it's about a girl who's raped and her struggle to speak up and tell someone about this, and because she feels she's unable to tell anyone about this, she stops speaking almost altogether. She doesn't completely stop speaking. So you pretty much know what happens, and reading a book like this, you kind of figure, at least I figured, that, well, the ending is going to be her finally telling someone, and so you have the, oh, who's she going to tell, when is she finally going to tell someone, but, like, I was just flipping through here, and I happened to see the very last page. So I knew, before I even read it, who she was going to tell, and still, it doesn't feel spoiled at all, and I usually hate spoilers. This book is not really about the end. It's about getting to the end, and it's about, more importantly, not just you as the reader getting to the end, but getting the character to the end, which I think is kind of a difference that doesn't occur oftentimes. In a way, this book was kind of difficult for me to read because it really, really reminded me of middle school, and it kind of like took me back to that time of my life that I did not want to go back to. Not high school so much, even though she is in high school, simply because for high school, I had changed schools and I was going to private school, so my experience of high school was completely different from how it was for her. But middle school, it was very, very similar. Now, fortunately, I hadn't been raped the summer before, but I didn't talk to anyone either, because I was bullied to the point of I felt like I couldn't say anything, and I couldn't say anything to anyone when I was being bullied. So it was interesting for me on that level, too, which is what I like about this, that it's, even though it's a book about very specific circumstance that not a lot of people, fortunately, have to go through, it's also very, very relatable. And yeah, it goes kind of extreme. She doesn't completely stop speaking, because that would be really, I have the platinum edition of it, and the author actually talks about why she didn't have her completely stop speaking completely, because she said that would be a whole nother issue of psychological problems that would have her be even more messed up and other stuff. So, but yeah, so I think it's something that's really relatable, even for people. I think this would be a good book to be read by basically any teenager ever. Like, yeah, whether they are the one who is bullied and ostracized to the point where they feel like they have no voice and their voice has been taken away, or they're the person who takes away someone's voice, or if they're the person who sees someone else's voice being taken away and needs to find their own voice to stop it. So, yeah, highly, highly recommend this book, and not just to teenagers either. I mean, I loved it this much, and I'm 20, which is not that far outside of a teenager, but I haven't been in high school for a while, it feels like. But, yeah, really, really excellent book. And the people who try and ban, it just makes no sense. I mean, book banning really makes very little sense to me anyway. But to hear them talk, you'd think that the rape scene is really explicit. It's like, if you just pick that up, if you are so naive and innocent that, like, you would be first finding out of the existence of rape from this, you wouldn't know what was happening. Like, if you had no idea what rape really even was, you probably would have no idea what was going on. It's stupid, because everybody should read this book, and this, to me, is the kind of books that people should be reading in high school and middle school. Not like The Scarlet Letter, which, okay, fine book, but this is more important and valuable to people, not just from, ooh, let's learn about classic literature today perspective, not just from an academic perspective, but from a personal life perspective. It's kind of like the way Looking for Alaska is, and it's just like, yeah. So cover art. The image of a tree, especially a tree with leaves versus a tree that's dead, is very important in here. So I really like that that's incorporated into here, and I like how it's incorporated into the cover to have the leaves, to have sort of the feel of a tree, without it being like, tree. I like that it's a bit more abstract, that it's kind of difficult, because in some ways this book is pretty abstract. So I like that the cover kind of matches with it. I do have a bit of an issue with the way the face is, simply because I don't like zoomed in, cut off faces. It's way, way too overdone, particularly in young adult book covers. It's just too, people do it too often, so I kind of wish they had been done a bit differently than that, but I love the way that the tree is incorporated. Lauren, I have to assign you a book, as it would have been if we had gone with the assignments that you, Katie, and I came up with, and I'm actually really, really glad that I got you, as I said then, and I'm glad that I didn't have to change all of a sudden and figure out, oh, who am I going to assign something to now? Yeah, but, because I actually came up with, like, a whole list of, I think there were, like, 5 or so books that I was debating assigning you, and it was kind of difficult then for me to narrow it down to just one. But I ended up with, you are being assigned Druids by Morgan Llewellyn, which I will put down in the bookshelf so that, like, you know how to spell her name and everything. But, yeah. For the book assignments, I got Lauren, and I got Lauren in the other assignment arrangement too, so it worked out great for me. Lauren, I'm really glad that I got you, because we have a lot of fairly similar interests outside of books, so I felt like I was able to come up with some ideas for things that might interest you and you might like. So I actually had a list of about 5, I think, books that I was trying to go through and pick one, and the one I ended up picking is Druids by Morgan Llewellyn, which I will put down in the bookshelf so that, like, you know how to spell her name and everything. It's a book I read senior year of high school, I believe it was. Yeah, because it was when I was on tour with choir. So, yeah, I greatly enjoyed it, and I hope you do as well. Katie's question was, how are you doing? And I am really, really busy and really, really stressed because I have finals going on right now, and my last class is next Thursday, so I have just a little over a week to get everything done, and actually by the time I record my next Bookfighters video, I will have already finished and handed in 3 out of 4 of my finals, although there's one that I might have a chance to do some touch-ups on. But that all depends on if I can turn it in or not, because I'm flying to Pennsylvania right after my last class next Thursday. So really busy, really stressed. The computer lab not being nice to me at all. There are way too many people needing to use way too small of a lab. And yeah. So because of that, for next week, I'm going to read The Tales of Beetle the Bard, which I've read several times before, and I know I can get through really, really quickly, and I already know that they're excellent. I really wanted to read this for Bookfighters because I wanted to talk about them. So yeah. Eddie and Sarah popping in real quick to say that I forgot to ask you the question that I was going to ask you earlier, which is, how do you feel about spoilers? I talked about this a little bit with Speak. Hopefully next week I'll have more time to put into my video and can talk about it more. Although that might not happen. I don't know what's going to be happening next week. So, Katie, I'll see you tomorrow, and I look forward to finding out what I'm